Hi, so today I'm joined with Mads Singers, one of the ODYS mentors. Pleased to meet you, Mads. How you doing?
Good to see you again, James. I'm doing very good, very good.
Sounds good. Let's jump straight in then, Mads. So, how has mentorship shaped your career and personal growth?
Yeah, I think my career started in the corporate world, and I was very focused on management when I was at a very young age. And I would say both mentors and coaches have had a profound impact. I think, particularly now in my later successful years, I'll say I hire coaches for and mentors for everything, right? Because fundamentally, there's no point in me figuring out how to go to the gym and use the equipment the right way when I can have someone teach me how to do it. The same thing with business, right? Like if I want to get my finances under control or get better at finances, I would hire someone who's good at it and get them to help out, right? Yes, you can figure stuff out by yourself, but one, you make way more mistakes, and two, it just takes significantly longer. And my philosophy is I like generating great results and make a lot of money very quickly instead of doing it very slowly. So I think that's the sort of core mentality behind mentorship, right? So in terms of my career specifically, I've had probably three mentors over the years. The first two, I didn't pay anything. It was people I took initiative. I walked up to them and I said, hey, you're cool. You're doing what I want to do someday. Would you be interested in mentoring me? And the last one is someone I paid for, where I've got a ton of value just from a high level business standpoint. Whatever you're doing, there's always, I mean, unless you're Elon Musk, which I don't think he'll be watching this, unless you're Elon Musk, there's always someone who's better than you. So yeah.
Sounds good. So, when did you first realize then in your journey that mentorship was important?
I spent a lot of time when I was getting into management, like reading a ton of books and so on. And I read, I think Think and Grow Rich was an example of a book, and that talks a lot about masterminds and so on, and finding other like-minded people to mastermind with. And I found that super helpful. And I think it was through some of the books I was reading that I kind of got the notion of looking for mentors and looking for coaches and so on, right? Um, and I would say, I mean, I've had some great coaches and mentors, and I've had some that was less great. I think sometimes, you don't necessarily win every time. Sometimes the personality the two of you have is just too far apart, right? Sometimes, stuff can happen, but I would say 85, 90% of my sort of mentorship experiences have been very good.
So, what would you say? Like, what key lessons have you learned that you couldn't have learned on your own from these mentors, or you might have been able to learn, but it might have took you 2, 3 years of failing to get there?
Honestly, a lot of what I'm teaching people today. So, like for me, delegation, for example, was a huge thing. Like I'm a super perfectionist. I'm super detail oriented by nature, and I'm the last person that would naturally delegate anything when I could just do it myself. And it did take me a while to learn how to do it, but having a mentor sort of guiding me through that journey was absolutely invaluable, right? Like I see a lot of people like myself who spend 10, 20, 30 years just stuck and not getting anywhere because they don't get hold of delegation, which is just such a critical skill. I'd also say communication specifically. I think communication when you're in business, when you're in management, like communication is so freaking important. And I've had multiple coaches and mentors, some on public speaking, some on, more general communication. And I think today, uh, I'm sure some people would disagree, but I believe I'm a fairly good communicator today. And that's come from, again, you can learn it, and a lot of people learn all the time. But for me, just getting guidance, a lot of the time as humans, we don't see how other people see us, right? One of the great examples I had, one of my first coaches, she was basically telling me, she was like, "Hey, Matt, do you know you offend people?" And I looked at her and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'm not trying to be offensive ever, unless there's a very good reason for it. But she's like, yeah, when you're being funny and humorous, people don't get it. Like they think you're being serious. And it took me a long time in the beginning. I was just pushing it away. I was like, no, that can't be. But then I actually subconsciously I started watching people. I started looking at people when I was being ironic or sarcastic or something, and I realized that, oh, actually this person didn't take it as a joke. They kind of got offended. And if I hadn't had outside perspective to tell me, like I would probably either never or it would take me a really long time to learn the lesson. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like honestly, even if you ask your friend next door or someone who has some business acumen to look at your business, often they can give you great advice because often ourselves, we just tunnel vision into things, right? We don't see, like a lot of time when I'm helping other people and coaching other people as a coach and as a mentor, like sometimes I'm like, oh, I should also do that myself, right? So sometimes I see something obvious, I give a piece of advice and I'm like, well, that's a great advice. How am I doing that, right? And that
Yeah.
happens all the time.
I think the big one there is it's learning to let go. A lot of business owners seem to be perfectionists, and it's so difficult to initially take that. Okay, I'm going to let go, and I'm going to let them take the responsibility and ownership of the tasks at heart, and then obviously then they can go and do it. And I think that's where anyone that comes to me, they always seem to come and hit a threshold, and I always say you need to go and speak to Mads. You need to go and get that middle management system set up, and you need to stop thinking that a job done well is done by yourself. You need to learn
Yeah.
to let go, and that's where you come as a mentor, yeah, it's great. So the next question is, what is a mentor not?
Yeah, so this is a big one. I think one of the key things most people when they're getting a coach or a mentor, they're kind of expecting them to solve their problems, right? And the whole thing, and I'm very conscious of that as a coach and as a mentor, is my goal is never to solve people's problems. It's pushing them in the right direction, right? So if you're tunnel vision in your business like this, it's opening your eyes a little bit so you have more view and you can see a better path, right? Like, don't hire a mentor if you want someone to do something for you, as in, oh, mentor, can you build me this site or can you fix my SEO? Like, that's not what a mentor is, right? And I think the biggest thing for me, and by the way, it doesn't matter if it's free or paid, like when I mentor people, if I mentor people who I see don't take action, I stop the relationship, right? Because for me, it's not about making money. For me, it's about when I put time into other people, I want to see it make a difference. And if people don't take action, I'm just wasting my time. And my experience is when you become successful, one of the core things you focus on is using your time on things that actually makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. And now I always say the term, if you don't innovate, you're going to evaporate. And innovation is key. And now, even more so nowadays with regards to artificial intelligence and stuff like that. Why do you think mentorship now is more important than ever as things are moving fast for people to grab hold of, let's say, an ODYS mentor and make certain that they are innovating, as well as obviously yourself with regards to management systems? But why is mentorship important nowadays more than ever?
I mean, I'll give a good example. So, our teams, I have a bunch of companies, but our teams are constantly getting support, and AI specifically. Like, we have hired people who are very good at it to come in and help our team out. Not hire them to do the work, but help them to come in and consult and, be a guidance for us, because we have some people that knows a little bit about it, but again, you can get 5, 10% benefit. But if you actually find someone who's really good at it and can really help you, then you can get a lot more value out of it. And for me, that's where it comes in, right? Like we're constantly looking at who's the best people around, who is the people that I can hire, or who is the people that I can get to come and coach and consult. And I've seen yourself do the same thing, right? Like sometimes sitting down with a Turkish guy talking about topical maps, for example. If you don't get it, again, it can be mind blowing, And two, you can sometimes just move your business forward significantly in a very, very short space of time. And people often make the mistake, not just in this space, but in general, like when they look at money. In business, I look at money in one way, return of investment. If I'm paying out X a bunch of money, what's the return? And fundamentally, the difference between being an individual contributor where you get a paycheck every month versus a business owner, it's not a question of taking all the risk or taking no risk. It's a question about taking risks that can give you an asymmetric return. And what I mean with that, as a business owner, you can go and put $1,000 into a lot of things. Now, a lot of those things might not give you any return, but the thing is, the potential return could be not 2,000, but 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000. So the whole point is that if you go and put a bunch of money onto certain bets, there's a good chance that at some point one of those bets will pay you back big time, right? And that's how I look at business. So business for me is about taking asymmetrical bets and really taking risk that not about taking stupid risk, right? I mean, if you take a risk where you put 1 million on the table with a 1% chance of making 2 million, that's stupid. If you put 1 million on the table with a 1% chance of making 1 trillion, that might be a bet worth taking, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. So with regards to that, you're talking about like trying to get, obviously surround yourself with the best people who are good at in their lane. How do you go about choosing the right mentor? So like, could someone come to you and let's say if someone specifically wanted help with, let's say, on-page SEO or off-page SEO or technical SEO, like how does someone go about choosing the right mentor? Or do they come to somebody like yourself and then you then can tell them who's best in their lane if they're struggling in a certain department?
So that depends a little bit. So for me, it's been a mix of things. So obviously I have a huge network. I spend a lot of time getting to know people and networking. So I often know people. So when I'm looking for a mentor, I often know people, right? Now, what I often do, if I have someone in mind, like let's say I'm considering you as a mentor, what I would typically do is I would typically ask other people that knows you what they think about you, right? Um, because sometimes, you might have an impression, like I might have watched a bunch of YouTube videos of someone or whatever, but if I'm thinking of hiring them as a mentor, as a coach, I might spend a little bit of time asking maybe someone I know, or, I can see we have some common friends or whatever. I might have a chat with them and say, hey, what do you think about this guy? I might be thinking about hiring her as a mentor, based on where I am and this is my particular problem. Do you think that would make sense, right? And sometimes you have people saying, yep, that sounds like a great fit. And sometimes you're like, oh, this guy, maybe not.
Yeah. So why did you decide to join the ODYS mentorship program?
I love helping, and what I love about the ODYS model is that it gives people, I mean, honestly, most of the people that get coaching for me is people who go through my management training and then eventually go up and can get one-to-one coaching, right? So I'm very keen on finding people who are really invested. This is kind of a way for people to get some coaching from me without having to go through all the hoops and jumps, right? And honestly, I really appreciate Alex as a business person. I think he's like myself and yourself. He's a very good business person, and I really like supporting those kind of initiatives and those kind of people.
So obviously there's many ODYS mentors in there that are all great and they're very good at certain elements. Why should someone choose yourself as being an ODYS mentor? Like, what would you say your main strengths are? Is it like on-page SEO, off-page SEO, internal links, technical SEO? Is it more to do with scaling staff, the culture of the staff? Like, what would you say your main strengths are as a mentor?
Topical maps.
Yeah.
No. My core strength as a mentor is definitely people, right? So again, I've coached hundreds and hundreds of business owners in how to learn to manage better. The one thing is everyone comes to me and says, "Oh, I'm a bad manager," or "I don't want to manage people." Like many people, like Matt Diggity and some of all these people who, they just wanted to do SEO, but when they first get in the ring with me, they typically change their mind because they realize that they have to make a choice between being an SEO or being a CEO, right? So the thing is, if you want to do SEO and you want to build yourself a full-time job or have a small stressful agency, I mean, okay, great. But if you want to make real money, if you want to build a real solid business, your focus have to be on learning how to become a leader to some extent. It's about learning, as you said, the delegation we talked about earlier. It's learning how to hire great people. Like there's some things that are really, really worth investing in. The biggest challenge for most people is they feel it's this big scary thing they can't do because they've never learned it. But it's like SEO. If someone sits down the first day and sit and listen to an SEO and they're like, whoa, what's all this shit about, right? Like every skill takes a bit of time to learn, but again, when you have a good mentor, you can learn it in a relatively short span of time, comparable, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I always talk about the 3 Ps. This is what people seem to get wrong: prioritization, procrastination, and being a perfectionist. But within that, what do you tell someone that's not yet had a mentorship call? What do you tell them? Like, what advice can you give them now with regards to go and take that jump, go and have that first mentorship call, and why it's so important to do it ASAP?
Yeah. Yeah, what I would say is 2 steps. I would say the first step is a lot of the time people again focus on the thing right in front of them. I think the most important thing when you're going investing resources, particularly if it's a large proportion of resources for you, then it's important to take a step back, really look at your business and ask yourself the great question, what's holding me back, right? Realistically, in most companies, it's not some little SEO hack, it's not some little whatever, right? In most cases, it's sales, it's marketing, it's management, right? Those are the 3 core aspects, right? Most SEOs are not unsuccessful or they're not struggling because they need one more SEO hack. Like that's not it, right? So it's typically the business skills where they're struggling. So the right thing to do is take a step back, look at your business and saying, if I focus on one thing, if I focus on being better at sales, if I focus on better marketing, or if I focus on better management, am I going to move this forward, or where do I feel I have the biggest challenge right now? And then make an investment based on that. That is typically how I do it, right? And sometimes you can ask people. Most people have someone in a similar position, or I mean, I'm saying don't ask your mom because if they're not related in business, that's not necessarily relevant. But ask a colleague, if you will, and just share your situation. Say, hey, this is where I am. What do you think? That's what's usually worked for me, right? And I mean, honestly, most of the investments I've made in coaches and mentors have always paid back, right? Because when you get a great one, it's just, you just unlock these shortcuts, right? And you just take so many steps forward that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, for sure. So specifically related to mentorship, what would you tell if you could go back and tell your 16-year-old self now related to membership? What would you tell yourself?
To be honest with you, I started very early. I had my first coach at 19, so I did start very early. The one thing I would say is, again, invest in yourself. So when I was younger, I still am to a large degree. I'm relatively cautious with money, and I was busy saving, and I was thinking about, okay, how can I put more money in the bank? Whereas really, in general, my experience is now being more experienced, not older, but more experienced, is that you want to invest as much in yourself as you can. Like there's nothing else that will give you a better return in life than investing in yourself, right? And for me, that's probably the key mindset that I wish I could go back and change a little bit. Because even though I had coaches and mentors, I could definitely have invested a lot more, a lot earlier.
Is this you admitting that you're quite tight and frugal and that's why you're always last to the bar at getting anybody any drinks?
Um, I usually take advantage of people who no, uh, no, not really.
Don't worry
I would
about it,
say
bro.
in general, no, it's a good question. It's a good question. So in general, I am more reserved, and there's a lot of these very assertive people who are always fighting to I don't know to show off or something, and I'm like, fair enough, let them do that, and yeah,
So back onto mentorship question, right? What this seems to be is prior to someone booking a call, you seem to have certain customers that come to ODYS and they say, the calls seem to be quite expensive. I'm not certain whether I can afford it. And they're all asking about the rates and asking for discounts. And Alex Drew and ODYS say, no, they're the fixed rates of what they are for the mentorship calls. But what's very kind of strange within that is you roll on 2 weeks or 3 weeks after the call, and these same people are coming back to ODYS saying it was the best investment that they've done, and that the return on investment from that call has now saved them. It's not only just what more money they've been able to kind of generate, but it saved them a lot of money where there was wasting money, let's say, on certain types of content or certain types of backlinks. So what's your kind of mindset and ethos and answer to if someone's saying it seems expensive versus it seems to be, I've never known anyone after a call say, I didn't really get much value out of that, if you get what I mean. So the cost versus the return on investment, what's your thoughts on that?
yeah. I mean, just to reiterate, like I've had in my coaching business, I've had more than 700 customers over the years, and I have a 100% money back guarantee. If people are not happy, I refund them. And I still have not had a single person. So in a similar vein as yourself, right? Like people are generally very happy with the output. So from that point of view, I mean, again, there's different level of expensive. There's expensive as in I won't eat for 4 weeks if I pay this money, and there's expensive as in this seemed like a lot for a relatively short amount of time, right? So again, it definitely took me a long time to learn. Honestly, even with workforce, right? Like particularly when you're hiring, like we have an outsourcing company in the Philippines, and sometimes when you're like, oh, I can hire this guy for $5, why should I pay someone $50 an hour? But the whole thing, the whole mindset for me is that you understand that when you pay for quality, you you're getting better results, right? So for me, the thing is you can always find a cheaper person to do something. You can always find a cheaper coach, but likely not a more successful cheaper coach, right? Or if you can find a more successful cheaper coach, then definitely go with them, right? But reality is generally successful people really value their time. And for myself, I mean, I'm busy, you're busy, we're both running many companies, and in the end of the day, if we chose to spend our time on someone else's company, um, and honestly, even with the prices that ODYS is charging right now, like, we might still be better putting our time. We might make more money putting our time into our own businesses than actually coaching people, right? For
Yeah.
me, it's like, again, my focus is not so much from a coaching standpoint at least, it's not so much on the monetary benefit, but it's more the ability to help people, right? Because I spend a lot of time networking, and for me, definitely helping people is one of the things that it gives me the most satisfaction, right?
Yeah, for sure. So how can people book yourself then, Mads? Obviously, I'm a massive advocate of someone, if someone's looking to grow and they've got staff, they should be trying to book Mads Singers. What a guy he is with regards to mentorship and business bit and team building and the rest of it. How's the
Yeah.
best way of getting hold of yourself?
Just getting onto the ODYS website and go under mentors and then find my profile.
Yeah.
It's typically the most handsome picture you will find. So
For anyone watching this, the URL is odys.global/mentors/Mads Singers. You'll see his profile picture on there. I'll let you decide whether you think it's a beautiful picture or not. It's been a pleasure having you, Mads. And yeah, anyone who's watching this, I strongly recommend booking Mads in if you are looking to grow. both an offline and an online business, to be honest with you. You've done a lot of business coaching for us, and it's been a pleasure having you on.
Awesome. Thank you very much, James.